Hello and welcome to this edition of Why Do You Do That? Today, as you can see, it's a nice fall day. We are at Franklin County Airport where we're going to interview a man that is a little bit of a legend around Franklin County. His name is Dan Marcotte. He pilots planes and very fast cars, and we're going to find out all about him. So come along. Here we are in Dan Marcotte's shop and hangar, and everything, all his toys, most of his toys are here. And Dan Marcotte, thank you very much for having us. We really appreciate the chance of talking to you.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So we're here to find out about you. We're here, so tell me a little bit about Dan. How did this all started?
This all started because I love action in motorsports.
Yes.
You know, I have a long history of stock car racing and motorcycle racing and just lots of different kinds of motorsports. So I got into flying as an extension of another motorsport. When I got done stock car racing, I had bought a Formula One race airplane that I had bought before I had gotten a pilot's license, and it was designed to race at the National Championship Air Races in Reno, Nevada. So my first start in aviation, how I learned how to fly was actually with ultralights, and then I was forced to get a pilot's license because I couldn't fly an ultralight at the National Championship Air Races. So I got a pilot's license to fly the Formula One airplane that I had bought. So that was my introduction really to aviation, was another form of racing.
No, you're originally from Bakersfield.
I'm originally from there and still
there. So now I have a little insight here because my father-in-law is Charlie Colburn. Okay. And Charlie Colburn used to have a store. And my wife, which is Tammy Colburn, said, I remember Dan with his little bicycle. He was a little tiny thing and he was popping wheelies. So Dan has been wild for a while. Is that so? Have you always been interested in things that go fast?
I think I have. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's never gone away.
That's right. So it's something that came right from there. Really, as far as were your parents involved into anything like that? How did you get the bug?
Actually, not at all. I don't know. It's some things you're just born with, and I've always wanted to achieve things that looked out of reach. And speed was always one of those things. Okay. And then mastering skills that I didn't have was always something that really pertained to me. And it wasn't always just things that had to do with speed or risk, but everything wound up. It seems like it comes back to that, you know. And of course, you're accused of being an adrenaline junkie and this and that. And you know, there's probably a part of that. That's true. But a lot of the things that I've done throughout my life, even though they're risky and dangerous, and yes, they're, you know, they definitely get your adrenaline going. A lot of the satisfaction I've got has been in mastering the skills it takes in order to do those things, as much as the actual act of what you're doing.
I think so. The learning part is very important to you.
Very important.
And you're jumping. The speed. Let's go back to the speed. Plane, cars, machines that I don't know the name of. A long cigar that is going extremely fast. What else? Boats?
Yeah, I mean, I got into building little wooden boats, so I built a little wooden speed boats, and that's new. That's, again, that was an avenue that I'd never gone down before, so it interested me, and a few years ago I started getting into building different kinds of boats and hydroplane stuff. So that's an avenue that I'll be exploring in the near future, and I'm enjoying it now, but it's still I'm very new.
You're just
at that.
very
I'm
beginning.
just barely getting my feet wet, so to speak, in the boat world. But no, it's mostly, you know, lots of car stuff. Obviously, I have a good background in land speed racing.
You do.
And I do.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I started land speed racing. I started building a car. I think it was probably in 1997 or so. I had a kind of a dream in high school and my early college years about building a car that would go over 200 miles an hour, and I know by today's standards that doesn't sound all that impressive, but when I was a kid it seemed a bit out of reach. Yeah. So I set my mind in building a car to go 200 miles an hour, and I didn't want to go 200 miles an hour on the freeway or on a racetrack. I wanted to go to the to the world's
So
fastest
fast,
racetrack.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted the adventure of going to Bonneville. So I designed a Lakester, they call it, and it was my own design. It was a rear engine car with basically a stock engine and transmission out of my truck. And long story short, after years of working on that, I had a marvelous adventure with my best friends that got in a van with me, and we trucked across the country, and it was just a great adventure. And by the time we had come home, I had a car that had run over 202 miles an hour. And,
oh my God!
And it was a lot of fun. And that story's been told time and time again. And sometimes when I sit down and I'll tell it to people, and I say, boy, this. I talk about this again, but halfway through it, I'm all excited, just like I was there again. So those stories, all the work and the effort that goes into building all these things. People are like, oh, wouldn't you love to have the time and money that you put in that? And
no, that was what I wanted to do.
I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
All right. So now, school. How do you learn to build? Okay, I want to become you. I'm going to build something. I have no idea how to do it. So. Where did you get that skill? Where did you get the skills?
I think one of the skills you'll need to have if you want to kind of go through some of the endeavors that I have is you need to be a personable person so that you can engage people that know what you need to know.
I see.
And I've been blessed with, some great friends that I've had the same friends for forever,
Right.
But just in my little area of friends and neighbors, I'm very good friends with, extremely skilled engineers, machinists, and those are the people when I'm developing a problem. Right now I'm working on a problem on this jet car that I'm working with, and I call my neighbor Jerry, this math is way, way above my level of aptitude, and these people are generous enough with their skills and talents where, they'll sit down, let's
figure it out.
Because they're the type of people also that they're not totally driven by profit, money.
Right.
And they're like, oh, let's make this jet car run by doing this, and it's fun, and that's.
So they're buying your dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're buying the dream. Okay, fun. I want a little piece of that, and I want to be part of it.
And it's fun, and that's
wonderful.
That's a big part of it. Is I don't have any real formal education. I don't.
You don't?
No, I don't. And, I've never taken I've been teaching welding for 20-something years, and I've never taken a welding course myself.
That's something.
But I've made a point when I want to learn something, I make it my job. So when I wanted, when I was building race cars when I was 16, I had to learn how to weld because I had to build a race car.
Right.
And I would work as, and then when I needed to know more, I would find a job, and I worked as a welder for years, and I still do. But I would find employment in the area that I wanted to know, more like an apprentice.
But designing a car, okay, you need an engine. So you said you took an engine from where?
It was a truck engine.
A truck engine.
Sure.
Okay, you had a truck engine and then a transmission.
Sure.
And you put all that together.
Yeah, you lay them on a table and you start putting bars and tubes around it, and
I love it.
Welding them together.
Yeah. So, but you need to have some kind of a notion of aerodynamics. You want the wheel to stay on the ground. You don't want the thing to start flying. So all that through other people or through your own idea or watching somebody else doing it?
I've always taken pride into visualizing my project and then staying true to what I visualize. And it always changes as you learn, and you learn what will work and what won't. The way I build things is a very can be frustrating at times because oftentimes you build yourself into a corner that you have to unbuild things because things aren't drawn out, things aren't blueprinted, things aren't per se designed. They're built on the fly, kind of, And I have plans for the next stage of the car after I've built one stage of it. So I build one section and then I figure out I have to overcome the problems that I built into the car in the next phase of the project, and it's not an economical or real time consuming or efficient way to build a car, but it's the way that I work, and I still manage to get the things built in a fairly short period of time, just because of the amount of time that I'll dedicate to working.
It's fascinating because it shows a side of you that I think most of us don't know about you. You're an inventor as well. If you create something from nothing, basically you're inventing it. Even if it's not drawn out, it is drawn out in your head, and you have that vision. My show is definitely about vision and people who have them as opposed to people like me that don't. Well, I have vision, but not that kind of vision that can really create something out of thin air. I'm good at fixing things, but I'm not good at creating things. So the show that I'm making is really about vision. That kind of vision. When did you get it? Apparently for you, it was very young. You already had dream of building things and wanting to go fast and finding out. And how do you go from vision to actually doing it? Building a car that goes over 200 miles an hour. Not everybody who wants to do it can do it. You see what I mean?
The key with all of I tell you, visualization is such an important part of every part of my life. Visualizing the end of the project constantly, even when you're in the worst parts of the project that seem like you'll never get there. Visualizing the completion. I visualize my routines constantly before I fly them. It helps out. One thing today I find, and sometimes people, people like yourself or people at air shows, they want to talk to you because you look like you've achieved stuff that they haven't, and and it's interesting, and it's our job as air show pilots and performers, and we perform for thousands of people. It's our job to inspire people,
right?
And it doesn't mean to inspire people to fly air shows or to do aerobatic, but to inspire people to do something. Something that that looks like.
That's why I'm doing this show. That's why I'm doing this show.
Something. And what I tell you, what I perceive is kind of a real, let's say, problem today in today's world is the fact that people there's access to everything on the social media sites and stuff where it's hard to invent something today.
Right.
Like people feel like, well, everything's already been done. Everything's already. What do I do? It's like, and I was never swayed by things that had already been done. I built a car that went 200 miles an hour, and I was excited. Well, people have been going 200 miles an hour since the 30s,
right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
So, and people, you get that constantly. Well, boy, so-and-so's car does 200 miles an hour and a quarter mile in 8 seconds. Sure. But mine hasn't. I've never built one that does.
Right.
And most people haven't as well, but they've seen they've seen lots of other people do it, so they count that as, what, have you done it? I mean, does that count? Is it not important to do it anymore? And that's a real, to me, it's very discouraging in today's environment. And I've never been involved with social media. I don't know how to use a computer. I don't have a cell phone. I don't have
Is it by design?
It's, for one thing, I'm not drawn to it.
Okay.
I have no inclination to really be involved with it. Two, I'm terrible at any of it. If you want to see your computer smoke, you will let me touch it, and in 20 seconds, I'll swear that I'll do the same exact thing.
You may make an airplane out of it.
But
all of a sudden,
it
just takes off.
My life. I really can't. And it can be a great disadvantage, but not really.
No.
Now, at first, I saw it as a disadvantage, and now I see it as an advantage because my mind is clear of, somebody's already done it. Somebody's already built the jet car. Well, I don't care. I haven't seen it. I haven't done it, and I want to build a jet car, and I want to drive a jet car at 300 miles an hour, and it doesn't matter if 7,500 people have done the same thing. I haven't.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that one.
It's very discouraging today because you'll hear that constantly when you design or you build something. One of the very first things often people will do is compare it to everything they've seen on the internet, or they'll Google jet car and look at all the ones that come up, and then his goes this fast, or his doesn't, and that's a real good way to cut off your creativity at a very early age.
Yeah, if you say that everything has been done already, why would you even try?
Yeah. If the first time you do something,
right.
Well, go on YouTube and you'll find somebody that does it a little bit better. Well, that's kind of frustrating. It's a terrible way to look at it.
That's also a very good way to explain it. I mean, this is you're one of the very few people that has actually touched on that, and it makes a lot of sense. Is that not only we have access to the information, but it somehow stifles the creativity.
It has.
Where a lot of people will tell you, well, you have access to everything, so if you want to create something, you have all the tools you need. But at the same time, having all the tools you need prevent you from thinking.
That's right.
Is that what you're saying?
And also, you can, oftentimes people don't think the challenge is there because you can look on the internet. You can look on YouTube. Well, I'm not sure how to build a jet car. Well, if you look on YouTube enough, probably you'll find a guy that will show you how to build this part of the jet car and another. Yeah, okay, now you've obtained the knowledge, but you still have no skill. you've just seen it done on a screen,
right.
but you still don't know how to physically do the, to weld. You don't know how to machine. You don't know how to do these things. And those are the things that you can't get just by Googling things or watching things on YouTube. You have to be in the shop. You have to learn how to work with that stuff. And I think there's a big, I teach welding. I teach these courses, and there's such a demand right now for people.
You teach welding to young people?
Young people and old people. Most of my students are adults. I teach adult continuing education courses.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So most of my students are
people that are changing careers and trying to develop new skills.
The people that are most interested in learning new skills and stuff are generally in the age group of 50 and up.
I see.
Unfortunately, that's what I see. That's the trend of the people that, like, when people want to get involved in what I do and they're excited, they're all 50 years old or older, which isn't old.
But not old enough to take the step and try to actually change their career or either make it better or so
it's interesting to see that.
And most of them by design, because they want to, or because they're at a point where if they don't do that they won't find a job?
No, most of my courses, probably 50% of my students take my course because they're in the field already and they need their certifications, or they need to get better at something they're doing. Their employer is funding the course so that they can get better at doing something on the job site. And then lots of my students have never welded before, and it's always interested them, and they need to get started, So it's about a 50-50 mix of what I get for students.
So obviously you are a very personable person. You do have a great way of communicating your passion. So where did Dan go from doing that passionate thing, that the race cars, the speed, to Dan being a showman?
Well, I always loved performing in front of people.
Okay.
The stock car racing was very exciting to me. I mean, it was thousands of people watching you perform in your race car, and it's exciting. People sometimes ask me, well, what would you do if you weren't flying air shows or racing cars? And some people don't know this, but I played music for years and years and years, and I played in rock bands when I was in high school and college, and then almost played full time when I was out of college.
Oh, wow.
Time. And I've had been in just local bands around here. And I mean, if I could trade everything in, I would be a rock star.
Really?
I would be. And that's, to me, is the closest I can get. And I never, I had good bands and we had a lot of fun. But bands, no matter how much effort you put in, there's a band dynamic. There's 5-6 people involved.
To have a group.
In whether or not everybody's on board. Oftentimes, people want to, just don't want to bring things to the next level or whatever, so it's very difficult. But when things like the stock car racing, the air show, it revolves around yourself. If you want to work 200% harder than the next person, you can succeed. And I'm willing to do that. In whatever I do, I'm willing to do that. In music, I could never, you could never really get the full dynamic for a group of people that would want.
You need people that are as intense as yourself.
That's right.
And as committed as yourself.
That's right. So if I couldn't have done anything, I would have loved. I still would love it. I still have not.
Yeah, exactly. And this is their new toy from this year, right?
Yeah, this is the first year I've had it on. I started building it the year before last year, and I think I would have run it last year if I hadn't lost that airplane. But I had to scramble to put the new airplane together, and so this took a back seat. And then
and you actually built this.
This was 100% built. Every bit of welding, machining. Everything is done out of my shop in Bakersfield with the help of my friend Drew Gusky and Jerry Brown. I've got guys that come up on Wednesday nights. They call it Jet Car Night, and they come up and work with me in my shop. It's the greatest thing in the world.
I can see why people will try to share that vision with you, because it's just amazing. This is just amazing.
Yeah, it's a completely homemade car.
Wow.
Out of my shop in Bakersfield. And it works well. I mean,
this comes out of Franklin County.
Sure does.
There's more than just cows. So, jet engine?
Yes, that's it.
Where did you find it?
That came out of the Canadian military. It came out of a F-5 Freedom Fighter, which is a supersonic airplane. And that's where the engine came from. Then I set it on a table and started bending roll cage tubing and.
Roll cage tubing, that's that.
Yep. and then built a car around the jet engine until it looked like this. And it works well.
It just amazed me. I mean, I'm sure then you probably don't realize it because you've always done it, and for you, you've grew up with it. But this is amazing. It really, it's, and it's. I'm not trying to just overreact, but. And you say there is no blueprint for this?
Oh no, no, no. It started out you know what I do is I build the center section that houses my body. I build that first because I based it on the same type of roll cage that I built for my land speed car. So I build a section that I sit in first because that's the capsule, if you want to call it. That's my safety zone. And then once I'm satisfied with that, then I put the rear on the car, then I design the front end, and you know some of the stuff is drawn out. The front end is drawn out first, the best I can, so that I know that the geometry works of the steering, and then I go around collecting parts and pieces that I might use. Some of the stuff that like different spindles and brake packages from old late model stock cars and such. I collect all my parts. That's a fun part. I love collecting junk.
This is not junk. This is the exact. We've seen junk. This is not junk.
And then I call up Jeff at Queen City Steel. Usually, send me up some box tube and this and that, and I get a bundle of steel, and then I put it in my benders, and it's fun. You know, like I say, and I have friends come up.
I can see why you say that.
It doesn't get much better on a Wednesday night to hang out with 3 or 4 of your best friends and overcome. I love problem solving. You know,
but wait a minute now. When you have a jet engine on your behind like this, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. I mean, God forbid, there is no wood. Yes, there is wood here. I mean, you're sitting on an engine. I mean, there's no separation or very little separation. Very little separation, maybe 1.5 feet.
Yeah.
And a lot of so the fuel. Where do we put the fuel? Here.
There's 2 tanks.
Two tanks. Jet fuel.
Yep.
So very flammable.
It's the flash point is relatively low. It's like kerosene.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, flammable.
Very flammable. Man.
And I never had ever had anything to do with the jet engine. So that was the learning curve it took for me to know how to feed this thing, what it needed, to start it, to run it. It has been in a year. I have learned more in the last year than I have in the last.
Do you ever regret not going to like aeronautic school or
in a way yes, in a way no. Academically, I suffer. I didn't read well.
Some people, yeah.
I don't. I learn by
hands-on.
Yeah, welding things together. Sometimes I'm frustrated. It can get frustrating sometimes when I have, the math ability of an 8th grader, and I'm trying to figure out some of these things. I say I've been extremely fortunate that I've had, my neighbor that's, very, an experienced engineer that will come and he'll work this stuff through with me, because the math. But he won't just do it for me, as well. He'll he works with me and shows me. Now, can I retain a lot of the stuff? No, it's too advanced, for what I do. But what I do is take what I can learn from him, and then I will, I will build the parts, try them, and then make them 3 or 4 or 5 times until they work. I mean, it's kind of the system of what I do. But would I have liked to gone to make maybe kind of like an engineering type school? So, yeah, I mean, I would love that kind of knowledge, but I don't know that I would per se be very successful academically in it. I'm not saying I wouldn't get a lot out of it, but I think I would probably frustrate instructors more than more than me.
Or either that, or you will fascinate them and they will build a car or something with you. Because if I was an instructor and I had a student like you, that's what I would do. What are those for?
They hold the parachutes.
Of course. You need a parachute.
So
hello. Okay,
it's so fun to drive. I mean, I love building. I love building. I love seeing a project come together. But I love to drive.
I bet. I bet. So can you actually turn it?
Oh yes, this car handles like a go-kart.
No kidding.
Well. Yeah, it steers very well. I mean, when you light the afterburner on this, it feels like somebody hits you in the back with a sledgehammer, and then you just hold on. I mean, it really. Really
Dan told me off camera that he can go up to 300 miles an hour with that thing without even pushing it. He's actually holding it at 300 miles. What does it feel like going 300 miles an hour?
Well, you know that car that you took a picture of earlier, my land speed car, my second land speed car, went over 300 miles an hour. It was wheel driven, and it would take me 5 miles to get the car to go 300 miles an hour. And it was a lot of fun because you really had to drive the car. Every mile you were searching for traction. You know, the car would get loose. You'd have to work with the horsepower and the drive to the rear end. And it was exhilarating and fun. And this car reaches, this car does what that car did in 5 miles and 3,000 feet.
Oh, yeah.
So the acceleration is much different. It's a very constant acceleration, but the jet engine, I don't want to take anything away from the car, but it's much easier. There's no traction issues. There's no, I mean, if you
it's going to push it.
It's going to go.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's going to push it.
To be honest with you, if it didn't have tires on the car, it would still go 300 miles an hour.
Yeah, probably.
It doesn't really care. So in that respect, it's almost like cheating. I mean, the speeds.
Well, that's not the same.
It's almost too easy to achieve the speeds, but you still have to drive the car, and you're putting in a lot of your energy into all your backup plans of if this goes wrong, if this goes wrong, if this goes wrong, if this goes wrong. Because the engine making power, that's not a problem. If it's running, it's going to make a ton of power, and the speed's not going to be a problem. It's controlling the energy that you have stacked in back of you is the challenge.
Excuse me.
The engine makes roughly 5,000 pounds of thrust, and the car weighs 2,000 pounds. So technically, if you pointed this car straight up, it would
take off.
Oh, sure, until it ran out of fuel. So you've got a constant acceleration. If you're accelerating even at 2.5 or 3 Gs, closer to 2.5, every second that you're leaving that afterburner lit, you're going much faster than you were a second before. So you really have to concentrate on lift points either by time or by sections in a runway. When we were practicing with the car, we'd run it on like a 4,000 foot strip, and we would first run the car to 1,500 feet, shut the car down, and you wouldn't. It's not a real, the car's heavy. I designed it heavy and draggy so that we could leave the afterburner on longer without. Because the crowd wants to hear.
Okay, you know what an afterburner is? I don't.
Okay, an afterburner is you have your jet engine, which is right here.
Okay.
This is the engine, and then you have the afterburner, which is from here to the end of the car.
Okay.
And you have, to make a long story short, the jet engine, think of it as like pretty much like your furnace blower.
Okay.
Okay, that's how, in kind of a weird way, that's how it works. The jet engine by itself makes about 2,900 pounds of thrust.
Okay.
And it's consuming, 8 gallons a minute or so, and it's creating 2,900 pounds of thrust. Behind the final turbine, there's a row of injectors that you put in twice the amount of fuel that the engine is burning. Behind the final turbine, it lights, creates yet another stage of the jet.
I see.
That creates yet another 3,000 pounds of thrust.
So that's two separate feed. One feeds the engine.
Yep.
And one feeds the afterburner.
That's right.
I see.
That's right.
So one is not, the afterburn is not the result of the engine.
It is not.
Ah.
It is a separate,
well, I've learned something here.
It is a separate, it's tuned, anyway, it uses a ton of fuel. But it makes a ton of power.
Sure.
So, I can run the car without lighting the afterburner, so I can run the car.
And what kind of speed we're talking?
Eventually you'll get going fast. But it won't accelerate. You don't want to accelerate it like 1 G, 1.5 G or so. It won't be. Eventually, if you let it go long enough, you'll be going,
so
fast.
In a plane, you can move the plane, you can turn the plane. That's entertaining. The part that people will dig there is just looks like a mean machine.
This car was designed because I love race cars.
Right.
So this car was designed to look like an old pavement modified.
Right.
In like something you'd see from Mad Max.
Exactly.
And that's what I envisioned.
That's what you wanted.
I wanted it for air show use, so I wanted people to be able to see the engine. So that's why you see the panels are kind of configured in a way where when this is at an air show on a static display, people can see how it's built, they can see the engine, they can see how it works. So what this has for entertainment value is, you know, when it starts, first of all, it's a big jet engine on the car.
So it's loud.
That's cool anyway.
Yeah, that's really cool.
When it starts, it's very loud.
Yeah.
And then the part of the show is too, what we do is I run the first part of the engine without the afterburner. Then what I'll do is I'll put fuel in the afterburner can, but I won't light it. So I'll be dumping 18 to 20 gallons a minute worth of fuel in that can without lighting it, and it makes more smoke than you could imagine. I mean, you can make an airport disappear in about 30 seconds with the amount of smoke. And then you let it smoke, and it gets people's attention. And then I hit what's called my hot streak momentarily, and it lights all the fuel, and it makes a big explosion out the back of the car. So that's fun. So you can play around like you tease people like that for a couple minutes, and then of course you line it up on the runway, and everybody, you know, and you bring the engine up to 100%. Without the afterburner lit, I can hold it with the brakes, and the car squats and everything else.
Oh my God!
And then I'll put the smoke on, you know, and the smoke will be billowing out, and then I hit the afterburner, and then you hold it.
I want to see that. You got to see. You got to do that in Franklin County, so we can.
We practiced here,
good.
But you can't do much here. The runway's only 3,000.
Oh, that's it. I see. So you need.
You can run the car 150, 180 miles an hour probably on this runway, but it's rough here. And we've run the car at Newport. We've done some testing there. It's a 4,000-foot runway, and we've run the car around 250 miles an hour there, and still had decent room to stop.
No, I was in Daytona once for Bike Week, and one guy he had a jet engine, and he actually put a car in the back and melted it. He did.
Oh yeah.
He had a car, and he backed it up, turned on the thing, and melted the car with sparks everywhere. That was one of the. I think I had my mouth open the whole show.
There's all sorts of fun things to do.
Really? Really? Oh wow, that's wonderful.
But this was my take on a jet car, and this year we were able to market it a bit. Next year, hopefully, we'll market it a little bit more. And run it at some different shows. It's a lot of fun.
It is. I can see why you're passionate about the whole thing.
And it lets me.
So does he have a name? Well, no, not yet.
Not really. It's just the Dan Marcotte Air Show's jet car.
Okay, all right.
And like you say, if you can go to an air show and I spend my day getting from my jet car, and then I get into my airplane, and then my jet car again for an evening show. I mean, that's a pretty tough day at work.
Yeah, I know.
It incorporates both. I love driving race cars, and I love flying air shows, and when I can bring this, and I can do both in the same day, that's pretty good.
Yeah, you had a good day, yeah. Now, toys, but expensive toys.
Yeah, you know,
and I don't want to. You don't have to answer.
Because I couldn't answer it if I wanted to.
Right.
You know, that's one of the very frequently asked questions is, you know, people often ask me, how much money are you going to put into this? And all of it. I don't know.
Right. Plus, you do a lot yourself.
Oh, it's all done.
So
right. You know, all the welding and fabric, but it's still component-wise and stuff. Oh, it gets expensive. You know, but I never look.
That's not about that either.
And people always, you know. Finances discourage more people, and I never had anything when I was growing up. I mean, my race cars were built out of absolute junk. I ran everybody's tires that they threw out, and I did okay. I didn't win 7 track championships, but I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot, you know. If you want to do something, you know, and if you want to fly air shows, if somebody, you know, pilots come to me, you know, I'd love to fly air shows, but I could never afford an airplane like that. Well, concentrate on getting yourself ready to fly shows, and the airplanes will come. Just keep that, you know, keep visualizing, keep that goal, and you prepare yourself. First of all, can you fly aerobatics yet? Do you need an extra 500? Do you need an extra 300L? Do you need a $500,000 airplane? Because are you capable of flying that airplane yet? No. So don't worry about that airplane yet. You better start working on, you know, learning aerobatics, learn the principles, read your books, learn the aerodynamics behind aerobatics. Get yourself physically in shape. It takes an incredible amount of physical conditioning to be able to fly these routines and stuff. So you're not ready for those airplanes yet anyway. So get yourself ready, and when you're ready for those airplanes, they'll make themselves available somehow. I really believe that, because I've never worried about that. I just keep improving on myself, work with the things that you can control. You know, your knowledge, your physical conditioning. You know, start with something meager. Fly the shows. You know, start flying. I started flying shows with the airplane that I used to race with. You know, it wasn't an air show airplane. It was a race airplane. I developed an aerobatic routine with it, and it was entertaining, and people hired me. And years down the road, I got a biplane, and I got this, and I got that. Now I'm flying an ultimate biplane. Still not the top airplane in the world to fly air shows with, but I can make it do. I can fly it in an entertaining fashion. The stuff will come. The equipment will come. So won't the money. Somehow,
I love your attitude. I love your attitude. I mean, this is exactly what that people want to hear. Is that if you have the drive and if you dedication, you can actually get to where you want to go. This is how fast you're going to get there. But
and you're going to have hardships.
Right. So talk to me about the hardships a little bit. When does Dan get discouraged, or when does Dan says, "Oh, have you ever quit on a project?"
If you want to take it, I'll show you.
All right, let's do that.
Some discouragement.
Okay.
This is me at the National Championship Air Races in 2003. This is one of my best childhood friends, Miles Hubert, my crew chief that's been everywhere with me for land speed racing and jet car building. This is my friend Pat Gleason, who I met at the National Championship Air Racing Pilot Seminar, where if you're going to race there, you have to basically go in June and go through like a racing school to demonstrate that you have the skills in order to be on the race course, this and that. So anyways, so you go for a week and you fly the course, you get instruction on how to survive racing at Reno. It's probably the most dangerous thing I'll ever do in an airplane. And I met Pat Gleason, who was instantly he was like a version of myself, but 30 years older.
I see.
He was an iron worker. At the time, that's what I was doing. I was an iron worker, doing welding and iron work. And Pat was, the nicest guy. We met, and it was like we knew each other for 30 years. Had lots in common. His personality was great. He had a Formula One airplane that he had dreamed that he was going to race at Reno. I had the Formula One airplane. I'll give you the abbreviated story of this, but we were, after the seminar, we were talking, and he was just like, Dan, he says, I don't know that I could after this week, I don't know that I could really race here. He's just like, he's like, I don't know if I possess, I don't know if I have the skill. I've seen what this is kind of like, and
there may be too much to handle.
It's a dream I've always had, but I'm like, he's just like, I really don't know if this is for me. He's, and he said, well, we talked a bit about that, and I said, I'll be back in the fall because I'm gonna bring the airplane. And long story short, I showed up in September, and I raced the airplane, and Pat crewed with me. So he didn't bring his airplane. He decided that he would probably would probably be better off if he wanted to be involved. So we put him on our crew, and we had like the best week with him. We actually we finished very well. We were one of the top qualifiers, and I'd had my license only for about 6 months, and we finished 4th overall in the bronze class. Wow. And we had a really good race. Anyways, I become real good friends with Pat, and I talked to him on and off. And in 2000, so this was 2007. It was 2007, November 2nd, on 2007. I was practicing in a Smith mini plane, which was going to be my next air show airplane. And just so happens behind these pictures I keep, this is the 2nd of November in 2007. And that's what was left of my Smith mini plane after I tore all the wings off from it and proceeded to hit the ground at about 150 miles an hour.
During a race?
Nope, this was during practicing air show aerobatics. And that happened in an evening where I was practicing in a place called, a place in Alberg, a friend's airport. Anyway, the fact
so you're lucky that you're here to tell the story.
Oh, it was for sure. That was, and oftentimes people will talk to me, wow, I can't believe you walked away from that. And there was no walking away from it. That was many days in the intensive care unit, and lots of broken stuff, and eyelids being sewn back to my face, and broken everything. It was a relatively painful experience. And I had been practicing without what's called an FAA waivered practice space, because at the time I had applied for a practice area. I hadn't gotten approval for the practice area, and it had been months and months. So I had taken it onto myself to practice anyway,
without
it. So not only had I just destroyed an airplane and broken myself to the point where I couldn't see straight or walk for days, but I was also facing license suspensions and legal action from the FAA, and so that was discouraging.
So what happened?
Well, I had been practicing inverted pass. Long story short, pulled the wings off the airplane and catapulted the thing into the ground. And
that's the G force.
No, I
You was too close.
Out of it. I was, too close. Pushed out. Piece of an elm tree cut a flying wire and it ripped every piece of wing off the airplane. So it was being very low to the ground, very fast, and where in a place that I don't think I wouldn't practice there today with my skills that are much more refined than they were. This was very early on in my aerobatic career.
So that's the next question. Okay, thank you for sharing that story.
Well, this is kind of the beginning.
Okay,
it's
go
actually
ahead.
kind of a depressing story.
Okay, all right.
So we were, we counted our blessings that we survived, and I had nothing with the FAA except to, I was just honest. This is what happened. This is what I did. The FAA was just like, yep, there's going to be a suspension. They took their actions that they needed to because I had violated FAA regulations. They were very good to me because I was honest, and I'd lost my license. I'd lost my medical because I'd had severe head injuries. So anyway, I was, 10 days after I got out of the hospital, I was, starting to get back into physical condition again, trying to work through, I still had a lot of broken ribs and bones and stuff, but was working things out. And shortly after, that was in November, and in December, I had found a new airplane. I'd bought the airplane, still didn't have a pilot's license. I'd shuttled the airplane back. And to move this story along, as I started to get, to fly, get my pilot's license back and kind of get back on my feet again, everybody kept coming back, like, how could you possibly survive that? Actually, there was probably 10, 12 people that watched that happen.
Yeah. Looking at the plane, it looks like nobody should be walking away from that.
There was no way that you thought you could survive. And some of it, I was conscious through most of it, through the wings coming off. It was a pretty terrible experience, and then hit the ground and it, kind of, had a head trauma and stuff like that. But I was awake on the ground. And anyway.
Good thing you was in good physical shape.
Well, that had a lot to do with it. But a couple years later, I kept thinking, well, maybe we'll go back to Reno. And I said, I'll call Pat and see if he wants to, maybe if he wants his airplane to run, if he wants to crew with his airplane, I'll race his airplane. And so I was trying to get a hold of Pat and I couldn't get his number. And so I called somebody that knew Pat, and I called up to say, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of Pat, and I can't get a hold of him. And they're like, well, you're not going to get a hold of him. I said, well, I can't, and they're just like, well, Pat's not alive. And I was just like, oh. I said, geez, what happened? They're like, well, they're like 2 years ago on November, 2nd, 2007.
Come on.
They're like, he tried to fly that airplane, his Formula One airplane. He said he entered a spin, he hit the ground, and he died. I said, oh, geez, it hurts in my throat. I was like, and they hadn't actually referred to the date, but they'd said November. I said, oh no. So Sarah Jo had looked up like either the obituary for he lived in I think it was Carson City, anyway out west, and they looked it up, and sure enough it was the same day. And
oh my goodness!
We looked at the day, and then we're like, oh boy, that was a terrible day. And then we looked at the time. It was an accident report, and we looked at the time, and we were like, oh, it was later in the day. I had my accident on my. It was after work, at some point, and then I remember looking at the time, being like, oh, that was a few hours, and then we looked at it, and it was like at the time delay.
The time difference.
Yeah, it was like within minutes. Both of us hit the ground.
Oh my goodness!
We'd had really parallel
lives.
Goodness. But anyways, we'd always
except you survived.
I did. And
so
we always think
did he come to help you?
Yeah, we think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
I do.
I think so too.
And he was that kind of guy. He was that kind of guy. So we're always just like, and that was depressing a little bit. But but there's lots of air shows that are dedicated to my friend Pat. Whenever I fly a show, I always dedicate my performance to somebody. And there's a lot of them that get dedicated to Pat.
So if we believe, like we both do actually, that he was there to help you with this, Do we believe in that sixth sense that he had that was telling him, don't do it, don't do it? Why did he do it?
Well, you know, sometimes you just have to overcome,
Yes,
fears.
there is those times, but there is also those times you should listen to your guts.
Yeah, there is. And I don't know.
No, you don't know why he did it, but if he had been you, if you had been in that position that something will tell you, nah, I'm not going to take that course, I think that's too much for me, would you have pushed yourself?
I have before.
You have.
You know, and oftentimes, like I say, when pressure is high, it's like nothing seems right. You know,
Right.
nothing seems right. But and then sometimes you make the decision, and you find out later that you're very glad that you made the decision that you did. But you know, that's
So
all.
you've never walked away from something saying, I knew it, I know I shouldn't have done that.
Yes. Oh yes.
Have you?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Because I'm a motorcycle guy, and there is time where I know I've took a chance that I shouldn't have, and usually it doesn't work out. It just doesn't. So, but in your case, I mean, I'm not going 300 miles an hour. You're going 250 miles an hour with a plane. You don't have much room to.
No,
to
the
say,
margins are
yeah,
are much
yeah.
thinner. Yeah.
That's right. So here he goes. Dan Marcotte is going to give us a little sample of what he's doing for fun. Yeah. So here he is. He's gonna take off. And he's smoking it. Oh my God, he's going into trees. Oh Jesus. Ay, ay, ay. Okay.
Wow. No, you can stay up there.
This is something you have to be passionate. Now we have to remember that he didn't go to school. He learned most of the stuff that he's done on his own, doing it. And that is just amazing. So he told us that he was just going to be easy on us. Look at him. That's what he called going easy, not doing too much. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh. Full circle. He's flying backwards now. Oh, unveiled it, and now he's coming at us. Oh, Jason. What you have to remember is that he loves it. He loves what he's doing. He's probably having fun right now. It's one of our Franklin County boys right there. Having fun. And there's a rainbow for him. There's a rainbow for Dan right there. Oh man. I love that job.
Like he's coming out for another one, yeah.
Yep. Oh my God.
Jeez.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, he said get right on the rail, the runway, but
Oh man. He gets to the point where the plane is almost stalling. In the trees, out of the trees. Ah. Oh my. Oh my. Some of those planes can cost up to $250,000. This one is not, and he's doing a good job with it. It's actually a tenth of that. Thank you, Dan. That was wonderful.
You got it.
we're coming to the end of the show, and I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody. Dan Marcotte, why do you do that?
Is there anything else that I would rather do? I mean, it's just so fun and exciting. I just love the adventure, you know. Always along for the ride. So, you know, it's just another chapter. I don't know what I'll be doing 5 years from now. Hopefully variations of the same thing. But always looking to step it up a notch.
Well, I can tell you that it's been a real pleasure for me and for Zach. Thank you so much to have us participate in a little bit of your life. I hope we get to see you again and talk to you again. And thank you for being an inspiration. I hope that the show is going to show a lot of people, young people, older people, that somebody with determination and drive can actually not only learn on their own, but make their dream happen.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why do you do that?